Hello and welcome to this final exploring session, first look exploring session on Endymion, the Man in the Moon by John Lyly. Today we are looking at Act 5 and summing up our thoughts. We've been relatively circumspect in elaborating on our thoughts about staging and where we would go with this play, because so far we haven't quite got to grips with the overall shape of it. It's very much we want to get to the end before we start formulating more advanced thoughts about what we would do with this. It has been quite a three-pipe problem, or at least a three-session problem, and this is the last session at this stage of the process. In the room today, reading the various parts, and in Act 5 there may be some doubling where people clash with themselves ever so slightly, so do try and keep up. Reading Dares, Corsites, and Pythagoras today is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good, I'm a historian, and I'm in Yorkshire.
Reading Endymion, currently asleep but soon to awake, is...
Yes, hello, I'm Lois, retired academic living in London.
Reading Panelion and Epilogue today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Cynthia, the Moon, is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
And reading Eumenides today, who's spent a fair amount of time looking into magic water spring things, is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director living in Germany.
Reading Floscula and Zontes today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and my tea bag actually says, celebrate the moments that matter. What are we celebrating today?
A moment that matters.
A moment that matters. It's always important to follow the wisdom of various beverages. Reading Tophas and Dipsas today is...
Hello, my name's Francis Cox. I'm an actor living in Amsterdam.
And Francis has the doubling whereby he is in love with himself, as opposed to many of the other doubles who are in love with somebody else. Reading Epiton and Geron today is...
I am Steve Longstaffe. My tea bags aren't talking to me, possibly because I'm on loose leaf today.
God, if you're going to defect to the other side. Whoa. Reading Samias, Tellus and Gyptes today is...
Aliki Chapple, who is drinking water in Lancashire.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be briefly reading Semele, assuming that Semele is allowed to talk again, having so far only managed to get out 2 lines before being silenced. I'm drinking coffee. If I'd known we were all going to be going so beveragey, we would have started that from the top. That's just the kind of crowd we are. Without further ado, we're going to roll into Act 5 and find out what it is at. And so we rejoin the world of, we've got some of the pages, servants type characters first, but they are soon to be joined by lots and lots of other people. So enter Samias and Dares.
Eumenides have told such strange tales, as I may well wonder at them, but never believe them.
The other old man, what a sad speech used he, that caused us almost all to weep. Cynthia is so desirous to know the experiment of her own virtue, and so willing to ease Endymion's hard fortune, that she no sooner heard the discourse, but she made herself in a readiness to try the event.
We will also see the event. Oh, but wisht, here cometh Cynthia with all her train. Let us sneak in amongst them.
Indeed, here enters Cynthia, her train, Floscula, Semele, Panelion, etc. Eumenides may be present somewhere on stage. There's also possibly Zontes, Gyptes, and Pythagoras, etc.
Eumenides, it cannot sink into my head that I should be signified by that sacred fountain. For many things are there in the world to which those words may be applied.
Good madam, vouchsafe but to try, else shall I think myself most unhappy that I ask not my sweet mistress.
Will you not tell me her name?
Pardon me, good madam, for if Endymion awake, he shall. Myself have sworn never to reveal it.
Well, let us to Endymion. I will not be so stately, good Endymion, not to stoop to do thee good. And if thy liberty consists in a kiss from me, thou shalt have it. And although my mouth hath been heretofore as untouched as my thoughts, yet now to recover thy life, though to restore my youth it be impossible, I will do that to Endymion, which yet never mortal man could boast of heretofore, nor shall ever hope for hereafter.
And she kisses him.
Madam, he beginneth to stir.
Soft, Eumenides, stand still.
I see his eyes almost open.
Once again, stir not. I will stand before him.
What do I see? Endymion almost awake?
Endymion? Endymion! Art thou deaf or dumb? Or has this long sleep taken away thy memory? Oh, my sweet Endymion! Seest thou not Eumenides, thy faithful friend? Thy faithful Eumenides, who for thy safety hath been careless of his own content. Speak, Endymion! Endymion? Endymion!
Endymion. I call to mind such a name.
Hast thou forgotten thyself, Endymion? Then do I not marvel thou rememberest not thy friend. I tell thee, thou art Endymion, and I Eumenides. Behold also Cynthia, by whose favour thou art awaked, and by whose virtue thou shalt continue thy natural course.
Endymion, speak, sweet Endymion. Knowest thou not Cynthia?
Oh, heavens! Whom do I behold? Fair Cynthia, divine Cynthia.
I am Cynthia, and thou Endymion.
Endymion. What do I hear? What, a grey beard? Hollow eyes? Withered body? Decayed limbs? And all in one night?
One night? Thou hast here slept 40 years. By what enchantress as yet it is not known. And behold, the twig to which thou laidst thy head is now become a tree. Callest thou not Eumenides to remembrance?
Thy name I do remember by the sound, but thy favour I do not yet call to mind. Only divine Cynthia, to whom time, fortune, destiny, and death are subject, I see and remember, and in all humility I regard and reverence.
Have good cause to remember Eumenides, who hath for thy safety forsaken his own solace.
Am I that Endymion, who was wont in court to lead my life, and in jousts, tourneys, and arms to exercise my youth? Am I that Endymion?
Thou art that Endymion, and I Eumenides. Wilt thou not yet call me to remembrance?
Ah, sweet Eumenides, I now perceive thou art he, and that myself have the name of Endymion. But this should be my body, I doubt. For how could my curled locks be turned to grey hairs, and my strong body to a dying weakness, having waxed old and not knowing it?
Well, Endymion, arise. A while sit down, for that thy limbs are stiff and not able to stay thee, and tell what hast thou seen in thy sleep all this while. What dreams, visions, thoughts, and fortunes? For it is impossible that in so long time thou shouldst see things strange.
Fair Cynthia, I will rehearse what I have seen, humbly desiring that when I exceed in length you will give me warning that it may end. For to utter all I have to speak be troublesome, although haply these strangeness may somewhat abate the tediousness.
Well, Endymion, begin.
Thought I saw a lady passing fair but very mischievous, who in the one hand carried a knife, with which she offered to cut my throat, and in the other a looking-glass, wherein, seeing how ill anger became ladies, she refrained from intended violence. She was accompanied with other damsels, one of which, with a stern countenance, and as it were with a settled malice engraven in her eyes, provoked her to execute mischief. Another, with visage sad and constant only in sorrow, with her arms crossed and watery eyes, seemed to lament my fortune, but durst not offer to prevent the force. I started in my sleep, feeling my very veins to swell and my sinews to stretch with fear, and such a cold sweat bedewed all my body that death itself could not be so terrible as the vision.
A strange sight. Gypsies at our better leisure shall expound it.
After long debating with herself, merciful in anger, and there appeared in her heavenly face such a divine majesty, mingled with a sweet mildness, that I was ravished with the sight above measure, and wished that I might have enjoyed the sight without end. And so she departed with the other ladies, of which the one retained still an unmovable cruelty, the other a constant pity.
Oh, Endymion, how wast thou affrighted? What else?
After immediately appeared an aged man with a beard as white as snow, carrying in his hand a book with 3 leaves, and speaking, as I remember, these words: Endymion, receive this book with 3 leaves, in which are contained counsels, policies, and pictures. And with this, he offered me the book, which I rejected, wherewith, moved with a disdainful pity, he rent the first leaf in 1,000 shivers. The second time he offered it, which I refused also, at which, bending his brows and pitching his eyes fast to the ground, as though they were fixed to the earth and not again to be removed, then suddenly casting them up to the heavens, he tore in a rage the second leaf, and offered the book only with 1 leaf. I know not whether fear to offend or desire to know some strange thing moved me. I took the book, and so the old man vanished.
What didst thou imagine was in that last leaf?
There, I, portrayed to life, with a cold quaking in every joint, I beheld many wolves barking at thee, Cynthia, who, having ground their teeth to bite, did with striving bleed themselves to death. There might I see ingratitude with 100 eyes, gazing for benefits, and with 1,000 teeth gnawing on the bowels wherein she was bred. Treachery stood all clothed in white, with a smiling countenance, but both her hands bathed in blood. Envy, with a pale and meager face, whose body was so lean that one might tell all her bones, and whose garment was so tattered that it was easy to number every thread, stood shooting at stars, whose darts fell down again on her own face. There might I behold drones or beetles, I know not how to term them, creeping under the wings of a princely eagle, who, being carried into her nest, sought there to suck that vein that would have killed the eagle. I mused that things so base should attempt a fact so barbarous, or durst imagine a thing so bloody. And many other things, madam, the repetition whereof may, at your better leisure, seem more pleasing, for bees surfeit sometimes with honey, and the gods are glutted with harmony, and your highness may be dulled with delight.
I am contented to be dieted. Therefore let us in. Eumenides, see that Endymion be well tended, lest, either eating immoderately or sleeping again too long, he fall into a deadly surfeit or into his former sleep. See this also be proclaimed, that whosoever will discover this practice shall have of Cynthia infinite thanks and no small rewards.
And exit Cynthia, train et al., leaving on stage Floscula, Endymion, and Eumenides at the very least.
Ah, Endymion, none so joyful as Floscula thy restoring.
Yes, Floscula, let Eumenides be somewhat gladder, and do not that wrong to the settled friendship of a man as to compare it with the light affection of a woman. Ah, my dear friend Endymion, suffer me to die with gazing at thee.
Eumenides, thy friendship is immortal and not to be conceived, and thy goodwill, Floscula, better than I have deserved. But let us all wait on Cynthia. I marvel Semele speaketh not a word.
Because if she do, she loseth her tongue.
But how prospereth your love?
I never yet spake words since your sleep.
I doubt not, but your affection is old and your appetite cold.
No, Endymion, thine hath made it stronger, and now are my sparks grown to flames, and my fancies almost to frenzies. But let us follow, and within we will debate all this matter at large.
And they exit. So yes, here we have in text the version of the dumb show that we saw earlier, or at least in the later version, the dumb show is there. Lots of interesting things. There's an interesting question of the visual aid of time passing, because if at the beginning when Endymion goes down to sleep there's only a little twig, then between then and now that can grow.
Oh.
Jack and the Beanstalk style until it's a mighty tree. I quite like that.
Like the one leaf on the tree waiting for Godot, isn't it?
Something for the stage managers to do in between that, during the interval. So yeah, I quite like Cynthia turning to Eumenides at the beginning, just going, "Stop fidgeting! We're doing magic here. Stop ruining the moment. Sit still, for goodness sake."
Should have been a model.
Yeah. And then I quite like the way Cynthia's sort of treating, Endymion like he's concussed. Of just go, look, don't make it. Someone stay with him and don't let him sleep, because he might fall back asleep and never wake up again. So that's interesting. And yeah, so it's a big old scene of telling a story of things. Someone telling you their dream. What don't we like in life more than hearing someone explain their dream to you? It's everybody's most exciting conversation filler. Thoughts in the room? Who wants to leap in on this scene? Lois, then Helen.
Well, it is funny the way Endymion assumes that Cynthia is finding this absolutely lovely, hearing this horrible account, which is obviously an allegory about people trying to murder her. It's just like having too much honey, listening to more of this.
I thought that too.
Helen.
Yes, I mean, Endymion doesn't immediately rush up and say, "I've had this most amazing dream." He has to be persuaded to tell it.
So again, is it like therapy? Get the tongue moving, get the brain going. He's got nothing else to talk about except what he's been dreaming for the last 40 odd years. So yeah. And the description, of course, that time has definitely passed for him. It's really making explicit that we've had some issues with what's going on with time. But certainly for Endymion, much older now. Aliki.
And that's a very poignant description. Yeah, it really stood out for me there that, he's lost his entire youth.
Yeah.
So, a big
Yes,
deal.
I thought it was horrible.
Yeah.
And Eumenides isn't great at breaking the news.
No, he's really not. And the other thing I was thinking is, I mean, presumably then, I know we had this conversation the other day and got nowhere, but it's now really clear that that time has passed. So he is now presumably 40 years older as well now.
No, Helen disagrees.
Helen disagrees. Okay.
No, I think this is a timey-wimey thing. I think that there has been a bubble. This thing has been one night. And there's been a bubble round Endymion and the tree, in which they have aged 40 years. But the rest of the cast haven't. The kids are still kids. No, I'm firmly of the opinion that it's only Endymion and the tree.
Okay, so someone mucking around with temporal dynamics there. It's interesting questions about how that necessarily works. Do we agree or disagree? Around the room, lots of hands. Sarah, then Leaky.
Well, yeah, actually, that's I love that theory, and also when Helen said that, it suddenly occurred to me Tellus kept referring yesterday to the lunary bank, where Endymion was sleeping, which is quite funny when you say it out loud. But yeah, you can imagine there's some sort of lunar plane where he's been whisked off to, where there's just him and this tree, and it's kind of existing in this parallel bubble. I love that theory.
Aliki.
Well, I don't know about one night, because Eumenides had to go all the way to the magic spring and come back. But the boys are definitely still boys. They're not men pushing 50.
A lunar month, perhaps, or for that. I mean, it's maybe a tachyon generator. We're getting a very leisure hivey here. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, Endymion seems to think that Eumenides' affection for Semele might have waned over this long period. On the other hand, I assume Eumenides doesn't also have gray hair, and so it's weird. I mean, I'm trying to think if it could be cat time or dog time or something. Everybody operating in different years.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the important question here is, what is our beard budget? What is our wig and makeup budget for this show? Because that, if we're doing the entire cast, that it's not a huge amount of money, but it's a substantial wodge of cash actually to do that well and properly for potentially a dozen or so members of the cast. I want to know whether that expense is necessary. I'm only half being facetious there. Other thoughts, not necessarily time related, or just other things. Elizabeth.
From the beer joke, Rob, reminded me of Bridgerton. Reminded me of the Bridgerton show. The costumes and things on that show. I wanted to say that I thought Endymion's dreams would be there'd be much more to them, and they would be much more vivid, because he's been asleep for 40 years. So I was expecting there to be all this description and all these different things that happened to him in his dreams, but it was only just that one guy with the beard, and that was it.
Lois.
Yeah, these dreams are awful, really. I mean, we don't know whether the dumb show was put in later by someone else to give a sort of a forecast of the dreams, but these are clearly political. I mean, they're all about plots against Elizabeth, and it's just I'm not quite sure. I think one of those ladies might be Mary Queen of Scots. I mean, there could be all sorts of stuff going on, but it really jars with everything else, I think.
Okay, we unless anyone else has something they're desperate to leap into. So yes, time bubbles or no. Is it the Jaggeroth who need all the chickens? Eric, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that line by Eumenides coming. Yes, I appreciate your feeling for Endymion's return, Floscula, but shut up. That's basically what he's saying in that line, isn't it?
Yeah. It's another of these friendship is so much better than love things, or anything between men is better than anything between men and women.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's Floscula as well, who hasn't done an awful lot in the You're just going, I'm so glad to see you, and it's no, we're having a moment here. Go away. So
she's the one who tells Tellus not to sort of go ahead with the plan, right, at the beginning.
Oh, yes,
right.
Yeah. So it's perhaps a bit of a lie as well. Anyway, we've gone on an interesting tangent there. I like tangents. Act 5, Scene 2, however, we're returning. We haven't seen Sir Tophas for a while, since declarations of love sent him to bed for an act, possibly so he could double as somebody else. Entrance of Sir Tophas and his servant Epiton.
Epiton. Love hath jostled my liberty from the wall, and taken the upper hand of my reason.
Let me then trip up the heels of your affection and thrust your goodwill into the gutter.
No, Epi, love is the lord of misrule, and keepeth Christmas in my corpse.
No doubt there is good cheer. What dishes of delight does his lordship feast you withal?
First, with a great platter of plum porridge of pleasure, wherein is stewed the mutton of mistrust.
Excellent love lap.
Then cometh a pie of patience, a hen of honey, a goose of gall, a capon of care, and many other viands, some sweet and some sour, which proveth love to be as it was said of in the old years, dulce venenum.
A brave banquet.
But Epiton, I pray thee, feel on my chin. Something pricketh me. What dost thou feel or see?
There are 3 or 4 little hairs.
I pray call it my beard. How shall I be troubled when this young spring shall grow to a great wood?
Your chin is but a quiller yet, sir. You will be most majestical when it is full-fledged. No marvel you love Dipsas, that old crone.
Agnosco veterus vestigia flamma. I love the smoke of an old fire.
Why, she's so cold, no fire can thaw her thoughts.
It is an old goose, Epiton, that will eat no oats. Old kine will kick, the old rats gnaw the cheese, and the old sacks will have much patching. I prefer the old coney before a rabbit sucker, and an ancient hen before a young chicken peeper.
Argumentum ab antiquitate. My master loves antique work.
Give me a pippin that is withered like an old wife.
Good, sir.
Then a contrario sequitur argumentum. Give me a wife that looks like an old pippin.
Nothing hath made my master a fool but flat scholarship.
Knowest thou not that old wine is best?
Yes.
And thou knowest that like will to like?
Aye.
And thou knowest that Venus loved the best wine?
So?
Then I conclude that Venus was an old woman in an old cup of wine, for est Venus in Venus, ignus in igni fuit.
Oh, lepidum caput, madcap master. You were worthy to win Dipsas. Were she as old again, for in your love you have worn the nap of your wit quite off and made it threadbare. Soft, who comes here?
Enter Samias and Deres.
My solicitors.
All hail, Sir Tophas. How feel you yourself?
Stately in every joint, which the common people term stiffness. Doth Dipsas stoop? Will she yield? Will she bend?
Oh, sir, as much as you would wish, for her chin almost toucheth her knees.
Yeah, master, she is bent, I warrant you.
What conditions does she ask?
She hath vowed she will never love any that hath not a tooth in his head less than she.
How many hath she?
One.
But that goeth hard, master. Then you must have none.
A small request, and agreeable to the gravity of her years. What should a wise man do with his mouth full of bones like a charnel house? The turtle true hath ne'er a tooth.
My master is in a notable vein that will lose his teeth to be like a turtle.
Let him lose his tongue, I care not.
Nay, you must also have no nails, for she hath long since cast hers.
That I yield to. What a quiet life shall Dipsas and I lead, when we can neither bite nor scratch. You may see, youths, how age provides for peace.
Shall we do to make him leave his love? For we never spake to her.
Let me alone. She's a notable witch, and hath turned her maid Bagoa to an aspen tree for betraying her secrets.
I honour her for her cunning, for now, when I am weary of walking on two legs, what a pleasure may she do me to turn me to some goodly ass and help me to fall.
Nay then, I must tell you the truth. Her husband Geron is come home, who this 50 years hath had her to wife.
What do I hear? Hath she a husband? Go to the sexton and tell him Desire is dead, and will him to dig his grave. Oh, heavens, an husband! What death is agreeable to my fortune?
Be not desperate, and we will help you to find a young lady.
I love no gristles. They are so brittle they will crack like glass, or so dainty that if they be touched, they are straight of the fashion of wax. Animus maioribus instat. I desire the old matrons. What a sight it would be to embrace one whose hair were as orient as the pearl, whose teeth shall be so pure a watchet that they shall stain the truest turquoise, whose nose shall throw more beams from it than the fiery carbuncle, whose eyes shall be environed about with redness exceeding the deepest coral, and whose lips might compare with silver for the paleness. Such a one, if you can help me too, I will by piecemeal curtail my affections towards Dipsas and walk my swelling thoughts till they be cold.
Wisely provided. How say you, my friends, will you angle for my master's cause?
Most willingly.
If we speed him not shortly, I will burn my cap. We will serve him of the spades and dig an old wife out of the grave that shall be answerable to his gravity.
Youths, adieu. He that bringeth me first news shall possess mine inheritance.
And exit Sir Tophas.
What? Is thy master landed?
Are you not? My master is liber tenens.
What's that?
A freeholder. I will after him.
And we to hear what news of Endymion for the conclusion.
Yes, because the play's going to end in a bit. Probably not quite what it meant. Yeah, there's once again that slight problem with the scene of just going, if so Tophas wants to likes Dipsas, that's fine. there's not a problem with that. I do like the idea, however, that they persuade him that he needs to have his teeth and nails removed, and I'm slightly disappointed that a chair isn't pulled out, and that this scene doesn't go slightly further than it does. I don't know at what point it needs to stop, but I think it stopped slightly too early for the potential of this comic business, and I wouldn't go too far, but I think it could have gone further. It's a good idea, basically. I like it. It's just within the general context of things. There's some wonderful names for dishes that we've been establishing. The plum porridge of pleasure, the mutton of mistrust, the pie of patience. Recipes to follow shortly. Lois, muted at the moment.
I was surprised to find that Sir Tophas has only a few hairs on his chin. I was assuming that this was, an older actor, but this presumably is just somebody in his late teens then, somewhere around then, rather than an older man. I mean, I can't, because I don't think somebody would have shaved. But anyway, that just struck me as odd. I thought actually Sir Tophas was so far, so eccentric, so far off normal as to be kind of unbelievable and not even very funny.
Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Sarah, also currently muted.
I actually thought there was something really endearing about this scene. And pulling out the chair to kind of take out his nail. In a way, it would make it even more endearing, because it's just the fact that he's actually quite happy to do this for the woman he loves. I don't know. I really warmed to him. It's like I found him really funny in the first session, and then yesterday I was a bit like, oh, okay, whatever. But then I really, really warmed to him in this scene, because there's just something so beautifully, I don't want to say naive. It's just there's something really innocent about his love, which I just find very endearing.
Yeah, you want him to be standing there ordering them. No, pull them out, and they're going, no, we don't want to really. That he takes it to the extreme, and that they're the ones who have to back out of their own gag. That I would like. I think that would work very nicely, and it's not impossible to do that within what is actually spoken there, to a degree. So it's got nice potential there that I like. Other thoughts, Alan?
I'm just wondering whether the comic scenes that we've had so far are actually basically there as skeletons which the comic actors would have basically used as something to riff on, and that in performance there might have been an awful lot more material, particularly physical horseplay going on.
Lois?
I wonder, because do children normally ad lib? It seems to me that's one of those things that I've always assumed that was one of the reasons, actually, why so many sophisticated dramatists later on liked writing for children, because they could be fairly sure that their lines would be delivered as they'd written them. But I don't know. Actually, I mean, I think the way you were describing doing the scene might make it bearable. It just seemed to me that it was these rather sadistic kids enjoying the whole idea of torturing this man, and which is partly why I didn't find it funny. He's in this sort of delirium, talking himself into the idea that having his teeth pulled out and so on would be just lovely, and the kids going along with it.
Yeah, the way a lot of these boys' company plays seem to be structured is that actually they're almost designed not to have any room for ad-libbing in the way that some of the bigger clown parts in playhouse dramas seems to be. But that's not to say that there isn't, and that there isn't a room for manoeuvre, or what the performed text as opposed to the printed text, what the fundamental differences are. We can never be 100% certain. I saw lots of hands. Helen, then Stephen.
About Sir Tophas's beard, we have had the beard before, because he was saying he needed his beard trimmed, but he hadn't decided whether to go for a pointy beard or a bushy beard.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on here with the beard. I know a turtle is not a turtle, it's a dove. But nevertheless, the vision of a completely toothless guy, a tortoise, does not appear to have teeth. I'm sure a tortoise does have teeth. I don't know. I'm not good at natural history, but this idea of the sort of slit with no teeth. I must say, when he kept on saying turtle, I kept on thinking turtle.
I have to say, that lands much better for a modern era anyway.
Yeah.
And that makes that is a much better image. Absolutely, Stephen.
If you're doing this is a response to kind of Lois's feelings about it, really. If you're doing it now, one of the things that struck me that when I was reading Epiton was, really there is that loads of room for reaction, and that you could extend that a little bit by having Sir Tophas having some tools or something like that ready, which he hands to people, some pliers, and they're stood there looking at them. In other words, we get Samias and Dares into that just reacting mode. So what you've got is one guy who seems to be running it, but actually theatrically, in a sense, the attention is divided. And it could be a much more benevolent thing there if you assume that they're kind of going, why should I pull your teeth? Oh, he's given me the tools, which he's got handy, to pull the nails, and they're just like, what? So I think you could recuperate it perhaps in modern performance. Perhaps that's all I want to say.
Yes, because Tophas is sort of driven to sort of basically almost, may indeed actually be on his hands and knees by the point that they actually stop and tell him the truth, because he's talking about becoming an ass on his so he could be literally going around just going, I'll debasing himself to a certain point that they go, okay, no, we'll just tell you the truth, and that sort of seems like an extension of that possibility. Aliki.
Samias has that line where he says, "Oh, what are we going to do with him since we haven't been to see her?" And that seems to me to fit Stephen's interpretation. That the joke is getting him to say ridiculous things rather than physically torturing him.
Oh yeah. I think that's the thing, is that it's the joke is running out of control because he's so enthusiastic about it, and they have to pull back somehow. Helen.
Yes, it's interesting. They suddenly decide that they change tack. And Dares takes up the running, and the witch thing fails totally. So they then say, and I don't think it necessarily true, that she's married. Now, and here we have, he's been married to her for 50 years. But when we saw him, he was very old, if it's the same Geron. So I think once again, they're outside the time-moving bubble.
Yes, that thing that, again, with the storytelling element of making it clear who people are in relation to each other. Her husband, Geron, who we have met earlier, who I don't know at the time whether he really got a proper name check, and whether we appreciate that this is the relationship that Dipsas, who we've never seen in relationship with almost any other characters either, are, that these characters are the characters that we're talking about, but whether the audience is getting their relationship and who they mention in passing here.
I do think that one of the keys to the kids' characters, it's Dares' line, "What? Is thy master landed?" I mean, this changes things totally. Here's not just someone to make you laugh. Here's someone who could be profitable.
Well, that's the thing, is if your master's been asleep for God knows how long, or other things have been engaging your masters, suddenly you've that's actually quite important if you're a servant character. Maybe why they've been doing all this is because they haven't had anything to do. Again, trying to dig into motivations. Lois, then Alan, then we must move forward.
Yeah, it's again about Geron. I think we were told at the beginning of the previous scene that he told some sort of terribly sad story to Cynthia. And I think he said earlier on to Eumenides that he had this awful story that he was saving up to tell. I don't know if we're ever going to hear it, but it might have something to do with being married to Dipsas, which could be rather a depressing experience.
Alan.
I must admit, going back to this landed thing, I think there was a reference in the scene yesterday to the kids going fishing or angling. And I think that they may be using landed in the sense of you caught a fish.
No.
Because you get freeholder right
Because
after.
you go on to the freeholder. He's a freeholder.
Yes. Is your master
Unless they're
landed?
playing
Does he
puns.
have lands? Basically.
And unless they're playing pun games.
No, I this is definite profit opportunity.
Okay, let's move on. We have a short scene before the final scene, so we'll just briefly do the short scene, see if there's anything to say about that. We have the entrance of Panelion and Zontes.
Who would have thought that Tellus, being so fair by nature, so honourable by birth, so wise by education, would have entered into a mischief to the gods so odious, to the men so detestable, and to a friend so malicious?
If Bagoa had not berated, how then should it have come to light? But then we see that gold and fair words are a force to corrupt the strongest men, and therefore able to work the silly women like wax.
I marvel what Cynthia will determine in this cause.
I fear, as in all causes, hear of it in justice and judge of it in mercy. For how can it be that she is unwilling to punish her deadliest foes with disgrace, will revenge injuries of her train with death?
That old witch Dipsas, in a rage, having understood her practice to be discovered, turned poor Bagoa to an aspen tree. But let us make haste and bring Tellus before Cynthia, for she was coming out after us.
And exeunt both Panelion and Zontes. So some people have been talking in offstage, and something has happened. So the news is out. What Tellus commissioned earlier, and what happened to Endymion. Is that right? It's exposition time by two minor characters coming on and briefly saying, "Oh, this thing's happened." Who would have thought it? Who would have thought it? Who would have thought Tellus would be so... Oh, what she got up to. Yeah, and if it hadn't been the servant of that old of the witch Dipsas, it's always the servants telling, gossiping, isn't it? That's what it is. Kind of thing. Sarah.
I feel like that, with the exception of the scene where Endymion actually wakes up, I feel like large parts of this play are actually like what's happening behind the curtain. I feel like it's been reversed. Like all the scenes that you would expect to see, like the lovers meeting and falling in love, and the lovers, sort of bewailing their problems because they can't be together or whatever, and the people being sort of whisked off to various places, and then you've got Bagoa being turned into a tree, and it's just like, where is all this? Where is it? It's like it's happening on a stage somewhere. We're just getting the people who are standing behind the curtain going, "Oh yeah, that was a good scene."
Oh, I know what's going on. This is an Alan Ayckbourn play, where the other set of scenes are happening in the adjacent theatre across the way, and you have to go and see both plays to get the whole picture. So I think we figured out how to stage this. We have to commission the other scenes to happen, and that way we can get to the theatre twice. I think we found our route in, people. We've been struggling. We found it. Well done, Sarah. Eric.
I was going to say, what if the whole aspen tree thing is actually like that twig that they were referring to in the previous scene? So it's actually not taken 40 years, but it's actually been overnight.
Yeah, maybe you need maybe you needed to turn someone into a tree for the magic spell to work, and just hadn't told the servant that. There's that magical payoff balance thing. the tree won't harm you. It's
It'd be
Lois.
really funny to play it that way, actually. It just occurred to me you could then have the tree in that scene frantically trying to speak, and then, it was all Tellus!
Or the tree's still for the entire thing, and then just at the end, the eyes open. I think that point about that this play is full of action. It's just we're not seeing it. It's full of incident. There's a lot happening, but it's not literally happening in front of us. It's people are always referring to it from offstage. So yeah. Eric.
Well, also thus far we thought that like Cynthia was quite ruthless in the way she deals with people, but then sort of Zontes says that like I think she's going to try and be merciful, or did I misunderstand that line?
No, that's right.
So like something is going on between like what the men think of Cynthia and what the women think of Cynthia, or something like that.
I think it's more what we think of Cynthia. I mean, I think everybody keeps saying how merciful she is, and we keep noticing how awful she tends to be, particularly to other women who talk too much.
Well, let's see where this goes. We have, I think, one final scene, quite a chunky one, so we're going to let that run through right to the very end of the play and see where we are. So Act 5, Scene 4, enter Cynthia, Semele, though whether we'll notice, Floscula, Dipsas, Endymion, Eumenides, Geron, Pythagoras, Gyptes, and Sir Tophas. Basically, everybody's on stage, and I don't know whether some of you are the same people. I know at least two of you are, so different voices if necessary.
Thy years are not so many as thy vices, yet more in number than commonly nature doth afford or justice should permit. Hast thou almost these 50 years practised that detested wickedness of witchcraft? Wast thou so simple as not to know the nature of simples, of all the creatures to be most sinful? Thou hast threatened to turn my course awry, and alter by thy damnable art the government that I now possess by the eternal gods. But know thou, Dipsas, and let all the enchanters know, that Cynthia, being placed for the life on earth, is also protected by the powers of heaven. Breathe out thou mayest words, gather thou mayest herbs, find out thou mayest stones, agreeable to thine art. Yet of no force to appall my heart, in which courage is so rooted and constant persuasion of the mercy of the gods so grounded, that all thy witchcraft I esteem as weak as the world doth thy case wretched. This noble gentleman Geron, who's once thy husband, but now thy mortal hate, didst thou procure to live in a desert, almost desperate. Endymion, the flower of my court, and the hope of succeeding time, hast thou bewitched by thy art, before thou wouldst suffer him to flourish by thy nature.
Madam, the things past may be repented, not recalled. There is nothing so wicked that I have not done, nor anything so wished for as death. Yet among all the things that I committed, there is nothing so much tormenteth my rented and ransacked thoughts as that in the prime of my husband's youth I divorced him by my devilish art, for which, if to die might be amends, I would not live till tomorrow. If to live and still be more miserable would better content him, I would wish of all the creatures to be the oldest and the ugliest.
Dipsas, thou hast made this difference between me and Endymion, that both being young, thou hast caused me to wake in melancholy, losing the joys of my youth, and him to sleep, not remembering youth.
They cometh Tellus, stay, here cometh Tellus. We shall now know all.
Indeed, enter Corsites, Tellus, Panelion, and Zontes, and possibly other people as well.
I would to Cynthia thou couldst make as good an excuse in truth, as to me thou hast done by wit.
Truth shall be mine answer, and therefore I will not study for an excuse.
Is it possible, Tellus, that so few years should harbour so many mischiefs? Thy swelling pride have I borne, because it is a thing that beauty maketh blameless, which, the more it exceedeth fairness in measure, the more it stretcheth itself in disdain. Thy devices against Corsites I smile at, for that the wits the sharper they are, the shrewder they are. But this unacquainted and most unnatural practice with a vile enchantress against so noble a gentleman as Endymion, I abhor as a thing most malicious, and will revenge as a deed most monstrous. And as for you, Dipsas, I will send you into the desert among the wild beasts, and try whether you can cast lions, tigers, boars, and bears into as dead asleep as you did Endymion, or turn them to the trees as you have done before. But tell me, Tellus, what was the cause of this cruel part, far unfitting thy sex, in which nothing should be but simpleness, and much disagreeing from thy face, in which nothing seemed to be but softness?
Divine Cynthia, by whom I receive my life, and am content to end it, I can neither excuse my fault without lying, nor confess it without shame. Yet were it possible that in so heavenly thoughts as yours, there could fall such earthly motions as mine, I would then hope, if not to be pardoned without punishment, yet to be heard without great marvel.
Say on, Tellus. I cannot imagine anything that can colour such a cruelty.
Endymion, that Endymion in the prime of his youth, so ravished my heart with love that to obtain my desires I could not find means, nor to resist them reason. What was she that favoured not Endymion, being young, wise, honourable, and virtuous? Besides, what method was she made of? Be she moved that is not affected with the spice, nay, infected with the poison of that not to be expressed, yet always to be felt, love, which breaketh the brains and never bruiseth the brow, consumeth the heart and never toucheth the skin, and maketh a deep wound to be felt before any scar at all be seen. My heart too tender to withstand such a divine fury yielded to love, madam, I not without blushing confess, and yielded to love.
A strange effect of love to work such an extreme hate. How say you, Endymion? All this was for love?
I say, madam, then the gods send me a woman's hate.
That was bad, for then by contrary you should never sleep. But on, Tellus, let us hear the end.
Feeling a continuing burning in all my bowels, and a bursting almost in every vein, I could not smother the inward fire, but it must needs be perceived by the outward smoke, and by the flying abroad of diverse sparks, diverse judged of my scalding flames. Endymion, as full of art as wit, marking mine eyes, in which he might see almost his own, my sighs, by which he might ever hear his name sounded, aimed at my heart, in which he was assured his person was imprinted, and by questions wrung out that which was ready to burst out. When he saw the depth of my affections, he swore that mine in respect of his were as fumes to Etna, valleys to Alps, ants to eagles, and nothing could be compared to my beauty but his love and eternity. Thus, drawing a smooth shoe upon a crooked foot, he made me believe that, which all our sex willingly acknowledge, I was beautiful, and to wonder, which indeed is a thing miraculous, that any of his sex should be faithful.
Endymion, how will you clear yourself?
Madam, by mine own accuser.
Well, tell us. Proceed, but briefly, lest, taking delight in uttering thy love, thou offend us with the length of it.
I will, madam, quickly make an end of my love and my tale, finding continual increase of my tormenting thoughts, and that the enjoying of my love made deeper wounds than the entering into it. I could find no means but to follow Endymion, and continually to have him in the object of mine eyes, who had me slave and subject to his love. But in the moment that I feared his falsehood, and fried myself most in mine affections, I found, grief, even then I lost myself. I found him in most melancholy and desperate terms, cursing his stars, his state, the earth, the heavens, the world, and all for love of...
Of whom?
Madam, I dare not utter, for fear to offend.
Tell us, speak boldly. Speak, I say. Who dare take offence if thou be commanded by Cynthia?
For the love of Cynthia.
For my love, Tellus? That was strange. Endymion, is it true?
In all things, madam, Tellus doth not speak false.
What will this bring you in the end? Well, Endymion, we shall hear all.
I, seeing my hopes turn to mishaps and a settled dissembling towards me, and an unmovable desire to Cynthia, forgetting both myself and my sex, fell into this unnatural hate. But knowing your virtue, Cynthia, to be beauty, I could not have an imagination to withdraw it. And finding my own affections unfruitful, I could not carry the mind that any else could possess what I had pursued. For though in majesty, beauty, virtue, and dignity I always humbled and yielded myself to Cynthia, yet in affections I esteemed myself equal with the goddesses and all the other creatures according to their states, myself. For the stars to their bigness have their lights, and the sun hath no more, and little pitchers, when they can hold no more, are as full as great the vessels that run over. Thus, madam, in all the truth have I uttered the unhappiness of my love, and the cause of my hate, yielding wholly to that divine judgment which never erred for want of wisdom, or envied for too much partiality.
How say you, my lords, to this matter? But what say you, Endymion? Hath Tellus told truth?
Madam, in all things but in that she said I loved her and swore to honor her.
Was there such a time when, as for my love, thou didst vow thyself to death, and in respect of it loathed thy life? Speak, Endymion. I will not revenge it with hate.
The time was, madam, and is, and ever shall be, that I honored your highness above all the world. But to stretch it so far as to call it love, I never durst. There hath none pleased mine eye but Cynthia, none delighted mine ears but Cynthia, none possessed my heart but Cynthia. I have forsaken all other fortunes to follow Cynthia, and here I stand ready to die if it please Cynthia. Such a difference hath the gods set between our states, that all must be duty, loyalty, and reverence. Nothing, without it vouchsafe your highness, be termed love. My unspotted thoughts, my languishing body, my discontented life, let them obtain by princely favor that which to challenge they must not presume, only wishing of impossibilities, with imagination of which I shall spend my spirits, and to myself, that no creature may hear, softly call it love. And if any urge to utter what I whisper, Then will I name it honor. From this sweet contemplation, if I be not driven, I shall live of all men the most content, taking more pleasure in mine aged thoughts than ever I did in my youthful actions.
Endymion, this honourable respect of thine shall be christened love in thee, and my reward for its favour. Persevere, Endymion, in loving me, and I count more strength in a true heart than in a walled city. I have laboured to win all, and studied to keep such as I have won. But those that neither my favour can move to continue constant, nor my offered benefits get to be faithful, the gods shall either reduce to truth, or revenge their treacheries with justice. Endymion, continue as thou hast begun, and thou shalt find that Cynthia shineth not on thee in vain.
Your Highness hath blessed me, and your words have again restored my youth. Methinks I feel my joints strong, and these moldy hairs to mold, and all by your virtue, Cynthia, into whose hands the balance that weigheth time and fortune are committed.
What? Young again? Then it is a pity to punish Tellus.
Ah, Endymion, now I know thee, and I ask pardon of thee. Suffer me still to wish thee well.
Tellus, Cynthia must command what she will.
Endymion, I rejoice to see thee in thy former estate.
Good Floscula, to thee also am I in my former affections.
Sorry, I was muted again. Endymion, the comfort of my life! How am I ravished with a joy matchless, saving only the enjoying of my mistress.
Endymion, you must now tell who Eumenides shrineth for his saint.
Semele, madam.
Semele, Eumenides? Is it Semele? The very worst of all the women, whose tongue stingeth as much as an adder's tooth.
It is Semele, Cynthia, the possessing of whose love must only prolong my life.
Nay, since Endymion is restored, we will have all the parties pleased. Semele, are you content after so long a faith, such rare secrecy, such unspotted love, to take Eumenides? Why speak you not? Not a word?
Silence, madam, consents. That is most true.
It is true, Endymion. Eumenides, take Semele. Take her, I say.
Humble thanks, madam. Now only do I begin to live.
A hard choice, madam, either to be married if I say nothing, or to lose my tongue if I speak a word. Yet do I rather choose to have my tongue cut out than my heart distempered. I will not have him.
Speaks the poet. She shall not hereafter with signs. Cut off her tongue, nay, her head, so that, having the servant of an honourable birth, honest manners, and true love will not be persuaded.
He is no faithful lover, madam, for then would he have asked his mistress.
Had he not been faithful, he had never seen into the fountain, and so lost his friend and mistress.
Thine own thoughts, sweet Semele, witness against thy words. For what hast thou found in my life but love? And as yet what have I found in my love but bitterness? Madam, pardon Semele, and let my tongue ransom hers.
Thy tongue, Eumenides. What shouldst thou live, wanting a tongue to blaze the beauty of Semele? Well, Semele, I will not command love, for it cannot be enforced. Let me entreat it.
I am content your highness shall command, for now only do I think Eumenides faithful that is willing to lose his tongue for my sake, yet loath because it should do me better service. Madam, I accept of Eumenides.
beg you, Semele.
Ah, happy Eumenides, that has a friend so faithful and a mistress so fair. With what sudden mischief will the gods daunt this excess of joy? Ah, sweet Semele, I live or die, as thou wilt.
What will become of Tellus? Tellus, you know Endymion is vowed to a service from which death cannot remove him. Corsites, casteth still a lovely look towards you. How say you? Will you have your Corsites and so receive pardon for all that is past?
Madam, most willingly.
I cannot tell whether Corsites be agreed.
Aye, madam, more happy to enjoy Tellus than a monarchy of the world.
Why? She caused you to be pinched with the fairies.
Aye, but her fairness hath pinched my heart more deeply.
Oh. Well, enjoy thy love. But what have you wrought in the castle, Tellus?
Only the picture of Endymion.
Then so much of Endymion as his picture cometh to, possess and play withal.
O my sweet Tellus, my love shall be as is thy beauty, matchless.
Now it resteth, Dipsas, that if thou wilt forswear that vile art of enchanting, Geron have promised again to receive thee. Otherwise, if thou be wedded to that wickedness, I must and will see it punished to the uttermost.
Madam, I renounce both substance and shadow of that most horrible and hateful trade, vowing to the gods continual penance and to your highness obedience.
Say you, Geron, will you admit her to your wife?
Aye, with more joy than I did the first day, for nothing could happen to make me happy, but only her forsaking that lewd and detestable course. Dipsas, I embrace thee.
And I embrace thee, Geron, to whom I will hereafter recite the cause of these my first follies.
Well, Endymion, nothing resteth now but that we depart. Thou hast my favour, Tellus, her friend. Eumenides in paradise with his Semele, Geron contented with Dipsas.
Nay, soft, I cannot handsomely go to bed without Bagoa.
Well, Sir Tophas, it may be there are more virtues in me than myself knoweth of. For Endymion I wait, and that my words he waxed young. I will try whether I can turn this tree again to thy true love.
Turn her to her true love or false. So she be a wench, I care not.
Cynthia putteth an end to thy hard fortunes. For being turned to a tree for revealing truth, I will recover thee again if in my power be the effect of truth.
Bagoa, a bot upon thee.
Come, my lords, let us in. You, Gyptes and Pythagoras, if you cannot content yourselves in our court to fall from vain follies of philosophers to such virtues as are here practised, you shall be entertained according to your deserts, for Cynthia is no stepmother to strangers.
I had rather in Cynthia's court spend 10 years than in Greece 1 hour.
And I choose rather to live by the sight of Cynthia than by the possessing of all Egypt.
Follow.
We all attend.
And they exit, and the epilogue steps forward to resolve any final doubts you have about the play.
Man walking abroad, the wind and sun strove for sovereignty, the one with his blast, the other with his beams. The wind blew hard, the man wrapped his garment about him harder. It blustered more strongly, he then girt it fast to him. I cannot prevail, said the wind. The sun, casting her crystal beams, began to warm the man. He unloosed his gown, yet it shined brighter. He then put it off. I yield, said the wind, for if thou continue shining, he will also put off his coat. Dread sovereign, the malicious that seeks to overthrow us with threats do but stiffen our thoughts and make them sturdier in storms. But if your highness vouchsafe with your favourable beams to glance upon us, we shall not only stoop, but with all humility lay both our hands and hearts at your majesty's feet.
And so ends the play with a short little allegory there. Okay, I have lots of questions and thoughts here. I'm going to start with the least important, which is just Tophas, who, having seen everybody pair off on some level, just goes, "Who's left? A tree. I'll have the tree." But the line just comes out of nowhere. So everybody lives happily, deeply compromisedly ever after. I mean, there's something I quite like about this, because it's not a sort of Hollywood happy ending where everybody gets the love that they wanted. They sort of get compromises. That'll do, and that sort of feels much more like life on some level. The slightly unsatisfactory nature to everybody's pairing off is somehow sort of works for me in a weird way. But people are allowed to disagree, and in fact, I'm sure people will. Thoughts about that final scene? It's a massive scene. There's a lot of long speeches. There's a lot of people filling in the motivations that we've been asking about why people have been doing things since Act 1 have now all been explained to us at the very end of the play. Helen.
I was baffled by Sir Tophas' line, "Bagua abots upon thee," but I think I've worked it out. He's never seen her before. And he takes her because she's the only one available. She's a tree, which is okay by him in the short term anyway. And then she is turned from a tree into a woman. But she's good looking.
And she's young.
Yeah.
And she's young, and her teeth and her chin, she's got teeth, and her chin and her nose don't meet, and her breasts are small and high and perky.
It's just not natural, is it? Just not right.
It's not what she's after. So he wants her to get the box so that she will resemble more his ideal woman.
Yes, we don't have some really important stage directions here, that tree moment happens or not, and it seems to be that, yes, that tree moment needs to happen. We also don't have, we have it in the dialogue that Endymion is youthed before them. Fairies run on and pull the beard away, and, the mask comes off.
I was hoping it would work, but it didn't.
No. But yeah, which is quite an important moment to really stand up. Other thoughts about this end scene, about all the various conjunctions. Francis, then Eric.
Yeah, it's a small point, but I just found it odd that Geron's and Dipsas's backstory was brought in so late in the proceedings.
I don't think it's just their backstory. It's everybody's backstory. This scene fills in all the motivations for what happens in the play, which we've been wondering about, the precise nature of Endymion and Tellus's. Basically, if I was doing this as a film, we would start with the trial scene, and then a little bit way through Tellus's opening remarks, we go wibbly wobbly, and we go back in time. That's basically because it's quite important, this narrative material, on some level. It's certainly important to the actors. We need to know why we're doing what we're doing. How important that is to the viewing audience is a question that perhaps a second look is more adept for dealing with. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It comes quite late in play. Eric.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's interesting how Cynthia basically takes control and sort of goes, yes, you will go with him, and you will shut up about it, and you will go with him, and and pairs them off basically according to the sort of male desires rather than. I mean, I'm assuming that they would have taken control anyway, but it just feels very sort of, I control everything, which is basically what she does, I guess. Like her character doesn't really change throughout, I guess.
Well, it does to a degree in the sense that she's no longer, there's all sorts of threats of banishment, and then goes for a more moderate approach towards the end. But the whole thing about Semele, because I was doing nodding acting, and then I realised that no, actually, she's doing this. And actually, if you ask Semele what she wants, she says, no, I'm really actually not that fussed. Until persuaded. So, this whole thing about Eumenides' interest in her, we've heard nothing from her because she's only said 2 lines in the entire play until this moment, when suddenly she's quite articulate. And actually, it's to say, actually, really don't trust him at all. I don't trust him. Sarah.
I thought that was really interesting, actually, because the thing that persuades Semele to accept him is the fact that he is willing to swap places with her. He is willing to give his tongue for hers. And I thought that was interesting because it's like he's giving up, basically. I mean, you could see that as a kind of metaphor for him giving up his position of privilege that he has within, a patriarchy. His ability to express himself, to have agency. Women, shut up and keep quiet. He's actually saying, no, give her voice back and take mine instead. And that is the thing that makes us say, oh, you know what? He's actually proved that he does love me, and I will accept him. And I thought that was quite an interesting point for an early modern play, and I think you could perhaps do something with that.
Aliki, I think. Next, yes.
And I like her argument. Well, if he was in love with me all of these years, he could have bloody said something. I don't believe he's really in love with me because, come on, we've just been sitting here. I see him every day. We walk by the harbor together. Nothing. So that was nice. I also think for a modern audience would have to make a cunnilingus joke at that point. But
yeah.
Well, what can we do? Other thoughts? Helen?
I think it ought to be brought out. Stephen has just very kindly given us some tree lore in the chat. That Lyly appears to have had a prop tree, which appears in many, many productions. You have a prop, you use it.
Well, yeah, potentially there's a prop tree, or certainly a love of using a tree in some way, shape, or form does seem to be a recurring theme. We have 4 more plays of which we may see more tree action. Helen.
Yes, there's also Pythagoras' line, which I thought at first was nonsense, but now I think it's part of the timey-wimey thing, that in Cynthia's court, an hour on Earth actually gives you 10 years.
Yeah.
So we're back to the weird time.
Yeah, that all that does indeed fit and make sense. So let's dig just briefly into Endymion and Tellus's sort of trial scene, as it were. The Tellus giving her side of the story, and then Endymion's side of the story. How are we feeling about both sides of these this lengthy oration? And also, for that matter, Cynthia's reaction to what is said as well. Francis?
Yeah, lengthy is the word. I felt Tellus took an interminable amount of time to explain a very straightforward and well-worn story. I mean, I was sitting there thinking, oh, for God's sake, woman, cut to the chase.
There is an element of, a lot of that we already know. I mean, there's nothing, some of it's important for this moment because it's about motivation. But the actual stuff that we know has happened because we were sort of there could be trimmed back quite a lot. Elizabeth?
No, I was just messing with my hair. I'm listening to what you're saying.
Fair enough. Eric?
I'm not messing with my hair. It's very too short. Yeah, I was going to say that's actually quite interesting that you should say that, because I feel like she does this long explanation because we didn't believe her at the beginning. We kind of said, she's actually after something else. So maybe it is necessary for her to do that. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Aliki. You've muted yourself, yeah.
I did. And also it doesn't explain anything. Okay, you really, really, really fancied him and he lied when he said he liked you too. So 40-year coma is fine. This is a normal... she goes on for 3 speeches to say, well, I really, really fancied him. Yes, we know that bit, sweetie.
Yeah.
Lois.
Well, it's also rather odd that, he says falsely that he never said he loved her. I mean, he may just mean that he never loved her, that he's been faithful to Cynthia throughout, but it comes across as a lie, and she doesn't contradict him, which she surely could at that point. And maybe because she also believes now what he believes, that is that he's only ever loved Cynthia, and there's no point in arguing about it.
Mm. Yes, and then Cynthia's so happy about his faithfulness or whatever that seems to magically make him young again. It's almost like she doesn't even realise it's going to happen. It's just like I'm just so happy, and that makes people young apparently. Oh, who knew?
Yeah.
Lois.
Yeah, that is the sort of mythology around Elizabeth. I mean, there's one poem from fairly late on, I think, which has those lines: all her lovers old do grow, but their hearts they do not sow in their constant duty. And then the idea is that she never grows old, but her lovers do. So this is sort of, playing into that.
Mm. I also find interesting. I also love that Floscula gets that moment again of going, "Oh, Endymion, I'm so glad you're back to normal." And Endymion, that neckline could almost be a put down of just yes, and I still don't fancy you. It might not mean that, but it sort of feels like that a bit. But then the weirdness of when Eumenides saying, the enjoying of my mistress, and Cynthia doesn't ask Eumenides, who is it you love, asks Endymion to tell her who. It's an interesting sort of progression. I'll go to Sarah briefly and then Elizabeth.
The reason he does actually say, in the previous scene that Eumenides was in, he did actually say, I can't tell you, I've sworn not to tell anyone who my love is, but Endymion will tell you when he wakes up. So that's why she asked.
There is a prefiguring I've just forgotten. Yeah. Excellent.
I do have a question, but come back to me.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I want to hear what Sarah's question is. I just wanted to say that I really love the pairing off of the characters towards the end. It reminds me of the way people ship. There's ships in fan fiction where we just kind of put people together and we kind of pair them off. I really like the pairing off of the characters in the end. And I don't understand, does Cynthia turn Pythagoras back into a person, or does she stay a tree?
Well, the implication is that maybe a magic effect happens there, but there is no stage direction to tell us that it has. So it would make sense that she does turn back into a person, and Tophas goes, "Oh my God, you're hideous! Get away from me!" But that may not be what happens because we can't be certain. I think that's a good shout, though. Sarah, what's your question?
Yes, right. Can we just ponder these lines? Cynthia, but what have you wrought in the castle, Tellus? Tellus, only the picture of Endymion. Cynthia, then so much of Endymion as his picture cometh, possess and play withal. Does that mean what I think it means?
Maybe not quite literally that. But yeah, it is quite weird. It has to be said. You know, what have you been doing in the castle? I've been doing this picture of. That's the thing I've been making. So much as his picture cometh too.
Yeah. So however much of his person you've managed to embroider.
Yeah, but
that much of him.
There's nothing. It's just a picture, so you can only play.
I see. Because I thought there was maybe some magical thing going on there, where it was like, like an enchantment. Like however much you've managed to create of him, that much you can have.
You've got
because you loved him so much.
An Endymion in the cupboard there.
In the cupboard.
Any additional thoughts on that and the meaning of that, and whether we take that too far? Got a spare Endymion for you. It's made out of fabric, and it's it's haunted by demons. But it'll keep you happy on long winter nights. Eric,
that made me think of there's a poem by Seferis which is about how do you call it, using Helen of Troy as that there was an idol of Troy, an idol of her in Troy, and she was actually somewhere else. I don't know if that's the kind of thing they might be thinking of.
There's a mythic origin for that too, so you don't have to.
Yeah, but it's a nice poem too.
Okay, I think we've touched upon quite a lot of the issues of that final scene. Now, generally, I'm going to open it out to talking about the play overall. Now that we've got a sense of it overall, and now that we understand most of the motivations and we understand who people are in relationship to each other, or at least we have a reasonable outline of how does this play function as or can function as a show, and also in terms of in relationship to the other three Lilies that we've done, if you've been in on any of those, just as we are at the halfway point basically in Lily's output. We've done 4 plays, we've got 4 more to go, and the next 4 are all sort of on top of each other dating wise. It's quite difficult to get a precise order as to when they might have been written. But they happen within a couple of years of each other, so it's a bit of a muchness, and they will get put out in the order of which is most easy for me to schedule. So I'm no longer trying to be chronological in the absolute sense. So yeah, thoughts about Endymion the play. Thoughts about what appeals, what doesn't appeal. That practical side of things. And thoughts about Lyly so far. Anyone want to leap in before I start picking people and making this your final thoughts of the session? Who's been thinking about Endymion a lot? Sarah.
It's not a very deep thought, but the thing that occurred to me yesterday, and I have seen nothing today to change my mind, is that to evoke the spirit of the great Diana of Vreeland, what this play needs to make it work on stage is pizzazz. I mean, I suppose all early modern plays, all plays full stop, need a bit of pizzazz. Even like a revenge tragedy needs a bit of pizzazz, needs a bit of vibrancy and energy to make it kind of pop with a modern audience. But I feel this play really does need to be staged with a certain amount of insouciance and a certain amount of just pizzazz to get it to work, because somebody, I think it was Eric, said in the chat yesterday that, it's a musical, and that really is kind of the way to make sense of it. I mean, and that final scene where you had Cynthia pairing everybody off, I just had this visual of her in her kind of Elizabethan in her Elizabeth garb, but just completely white and silver, so she is almost like a circular moon with her farthingale and whatnot. And there are just literally like a very fake set with very sort of stylized stars revolving around the heavens or whatever, and I just thought, it's like a mask. There isn't a song in this final scene. I kind of feel there should be, because we've had songs earlier on, and you could put on a bit of a song and a dance and make it all like ta-da, and that would kind of be the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the general tone and what the flavour of this is. I wasn't leaning towards, I say, musical per se, but certainly it has a lot of music and the importance of music throughout. That maybe there's underscoring, and with it, but it's that sense of having a mood and hanging scenes off it. It's not a play that feels like it's got that sort of impetus, that pace to it. It doesn't feel, it feels like it wants to languish in its moods at times. And the thing is, you just have to make it interesting. We're boiling things down to this really fundamental questions about making theatre. Is when it's not necessarily about narrative. What is it on that stage that is drawing your interest? And you have to find ways to draw people in. And some of the scenes are overtly comic and quite straightforward, but then you have these scenes that are just pure ideas being tossed around. And how do you keep the audience's attention for that scene? And then how do you tie all those elements together? Lois?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe playing it like a dream, the dream fairy tale quality with quite a lot of music at the ends of scenes, maybe even the characters doing a bit of stylized dance before they go off or something, so that there's a sense that the whole thing is happening in this strange sort of lyrical mood. I don't know, it just because I think a lot of it is very attractive, and I think as someone said yesterday, it would work better if we were doing it straight through fairly quickly rather than breaking it up, because I think the relation between the different bits would be more obvious. I mean, I now see Sir Tophas as just finally, as just a parody of all this loving impossible things. I mean, it seems all to be about people loving what they can't have.
And yeah, it's not overtly a comedy. It's not overtly a tragedy. And actually, it said at the beginning, it's not a story, and that's not actually wholly untrue. And that I find as an experiment in trying to make theatre without that much. It's not like the story is structured for the kind of payoff that you would expect with, say, a rom-com, because at no point does anyone really get quite what they want. They may get who they want, but they don't necessarily get the relationship they want. I don't believe for a second that that Tellus is ever going to really love the person that she's partnered with, and Corsites is perhaps living on a bit of a fool's errand here, etc., etc. Francis.
Yeah, one thing I found really interesting was, I was expecting Cynthia and Endymion, to be paired off at the end, but it was Cynthia was saying, just keep on loving me and we'll see how it goes, kind of thing.
Yeah, worship me from a distance, please. That was lovely. As you were, Aliki.
I mean, she's the moon, and she's, we presume, Elizabeth, so she has to be unreachable. She has to be chaste.
But for a modern audience who don't necessarily have Queen Elizabeth as their central thought, because this is a play that's also doing a lot of work for the time. There's an awful lot of references that may or may not be extended allegories and similes and things that you're supposed to read into it. That how much of that is necessary for a modern take on it. And of course, we don't have to be thinking about this as theatre. We could be thinking about I'm thinking about this as the potential for this as audio or visual, because then the question of holding people's attention in one room for a couple of hours, it's not the same problem, because you can make things episodic or do different things with it, different kinds of attention. Other thoughts? Eric, then Lois.
I think it was Alexandra who said yesterday that this one actually does work really well as a Zoom play, because the lovers don't actually meet. there isn't anything like sort of until the last scene, of course. But I mean, there isn't anything that is kind of handing over letters or just sort of about any interaction whatsoever.
I think there's only one point in the play where someone has to do something physically with another object, and that's Corsites trying to lift up Eumenides. I think, and you know, the fair, you know, kissing and the odd fairy pinching. I think that's it. Which actually a certain amount of acting was done the other day. I think Alexandra actually, when Stephen did the first lifting, actually went at the same time. So I think I might be wrong on that. I may have imagined it. I caught it in the corner of my eye. So you know, those things are possible. But you're right. All the sort of action happens off stage, is referred to, and you know that the play isn't about that. It's not trying to give us action. It's clearly not the author's intent. Lois, then Helen.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is to decide whether to keep any references to Elizabeth and the Elizabethan court, or just try to, forget that whole side of it. I even had this wacky idea, suppose we substitute Elizabeth II and had, her image there, and even had her image there and somebody else speaking her lines, and Endymion worshipping her. I mean, would that give something of the sort of frisson that it might have been meant to have?
No, I think one of the Kardashians might be more appropriate working.
I wondered about Marilyn Monroe or Elizabeth Taylor, another Elizabeth.
Some of them, it's not a matter of necessarily removing them, but just they're not going to have the meaning or thing, that they don't necessarily get in the way. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and whether we have other possibles. Helen, muted.
No, I'm not muted. I've been trying to work out what's wrong with this play for me. And I think it is that I'm incapable of empathy with any of the characters except possibly the small boys. I understand the small boys. I don't say they're totally admirable, but at least I understand them. Whereas in the other Lyly plays, at least I've understood and been able to somehow to get a feel for the motivation and to see how people get into that motivation. But here, I'm finding it extremely difficult to get a grip on who these people are and why they're doing what they're doing. It doesn't seem true.
I mean, one of the problems is it doesn't deliver us with the reasons why they're doing anything until the end. So it's like we're watching people doing things without context all the way through.
But even with even at the end, I don't think it's satisfactory.
Any counterpoints to that, Eric?
No, I was going to say that it's kind of like, I feel like this is a bit of a play about lying, because like we kind of think that all the way through we've said that maybe this character is lying, we're not entirely sure, and then it all comes out at the end where especially with the small boys, as Helen said, that they kind of we think that they're making stuff up about Dipsas, and then it turns out that they're not.
Yeah, he's actually there's this and the Bogota ended up being a tree, and you're thinking, oh, that can't be true. Oh no, it is true. Oh right, yeah, that's a really good point. I really like Eric's the thing of what happens to a play when you have a number of characters who might be lying, and actually what that starts doing to meaning and our understanding of what's going on. Sarah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. And I mean, also you've got the thing of to build on what Eric said, all the way through you think Tellus is not lying about the fact that she's fallen in love, but that scene where she goes off to the castle and you think she's dissembling, you think she's lying, and then actually at the end it turns out that she is the one who is being truthful, and Endymion is the one who is lying. So yeah, there's all kinds of things you can play with, like who is lying, who is telling the truth, and what does that do? Yeah, what does that do to the play? I think that's brilliant.
And so, Ed, we're going into final thoughts now. I'll be going around the room. Anyone who wants to... I don't want anyone to start doing pecking orders of going, well, this is my favourite Lyly play. But if there are any interesting contrasts or thoughts about this in relation to other Lyly plays, any final thoughts about what might be done with this, or just and if you don't have a final thought, then that's fine. Just say move on next, and that is absolutely allowed. Alan, do you have any final thoughts?
I must admit, I'm with Helen on this one. I just couldn't get into it. I can't see the point of it. Okay, we've done it. We've exhumed it, and I think a decent, quiet reburial is possibly in order.
Elizabeth, final thoughts?
I really enjoyed this play. I think I've enjoyed all the Lyly plays we've done so far. I think it's really beautifully written. I think the characters were charming in this one in particular. I loved Galatea as well, or Galati. I thought the characters were really endearing, and the narrative was quite compelling as well. I missed the middle part, so I'm just talking about the beginning and the end. So maybe there was a bit of a lag in the middle that I don't know about. But I really did enjoy it. I loved Lyly. And I like his plays a lot.
Excellent. I love a divided room. It's because that's the thing. The personal tastes also matter. Sometimes this is a question of who does one sell this play to? There's no point if your personal taste is for blood, guts, death, and destruction, then Lyly is not for you. If you're interested in other things, So getting a sense of the kind of play and what excites you. Lois, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we haven't mentioned yet, and I suppose I would be particularly struck by it, was just the extremely melancholy beauty of all those lines about old age and the awfulness of suddenly being transformed into it. And I'd hate to see that go in a production that was too farcical. I don't know. I quite like the variety of tone in the thing. And I think a production that was somehow extremely beautiful to look at, beautiful, the sound of it, beautiful movement by everybody, and, certain amount of dance, emphasizing things like the songs, the fairies, all that. I think it could work, just the sheer strangeness of the thing.
Embrace the strange. Francis, you've only been here for this session. How's it for you?
I find it a baffling play. There's some beautiful writing in it, as Elizabeth says, but just the shape of it, I just don't know what to make of it. I can't imagine how you would put it on for a present day audience. So if I heard there was a production on somewhere, I'd probably go and see it just to see what the hell somebody would do with it.
Yeah, that sets me up nicely to say, if you want to watch a production of Endymion, there is one available commercially from Edward's Boys, who did it in 2009. There is a DVD version available, I believe. I don't know whether there is that option still on the website. I did check a while ago, and they did Endymion over 10 years ago, and there is a DVD. I don't know, again, the technical quality of the DVD. It may be more for reference rather than the variations there are on how things are filmed. I haven't viewed it myself, but it does exist. There is at least one version out there, and it's not unlikely that it's the kind of thing that will pop up again. So it is a really interesting question that now we've done this first look, I'm now going to go and start exploring what other people have done, but I like to remain ignorant before I start, even though I have at some point read this play several times at some point in the distant past. Luckily, I have a terrible memory and I just forgot it, all of it. So it was great. For me, it's a new play every time. Helen, final thoughts?
I think I've said what I have to say.
Excellent. Eric, final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those plays where I feel like, I don't know. It's like, I think the equivalent would be like, you're sitting in the garden and you're just like sort of sitting on the floor, on the ground, and you just see something that falls down, and you think that something is poking out of the ground and stuff, and you just want to dig deeper and you want to see what it is. So that's how I feel about this play. I just want to dig deeper and like maybe, I don't know, add more or something or subtract even, if possible, just to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the nice things about Lyly is that you can keep digging. It's one of these plays that there are lots of options and possibilities to go with. Stephen, final thoughts?
Well, two really. One is they're sort of both historical. One is the Tophas stuff. I've been wondering how much of that kind of language is self-parody from Lyly, or is it entwined in a kind of call and response thing with the products of the commercial stage? I can't remember which ones they were, but I have a feeling maybe it was one of the Three Ladies plays. We're doing that kind of strange metaphorical thing, but doing it for real. And I don't know if Lyly is kind of satirizing or calling back to that, or they are calling back to him. So I'm really interested in that, in the way that Lyly's stuff speaks to others. And my only other comment was back to it being a kind of very strange resolution. I think for me, the timey-wimey stuff makes it a very interesting resolution, because it is, these people have history, don't they? They have history going back decades, possibly, depending on where you draw the bubble. And that makes it far more interesting than a conventional romantic comedy ending where people get paired up. And I also did wonder whether that might have had resonances given the relationships at the Elizabethan court. In other words, it wasn't just stuffed full of 18-year-olds hot for each other, was it? People with multiple histories, and quite complicated ones going back over many years. So I agree with Rob. I think that's a kind of it's an interesting experimental resolution, which in a sense the whole thing is setting you up for. So maybe we've been going all the way through it, going, what's happening? What's going on? Maybe he started with the ending, thinking, okay, what can I do with this ending, and then sort of grew a play out of that.
Sometimes writing a play backwards is the way to go. Return to Eric.
I was just going to say that I was trying to think of, while we were talking and stuff, of a modern equivalent, like what could possibly, be a modern equivalent. And it feels like the only one that my brain has come up with is No Exit, where like you're kind of like, why don't they just walk out of the room? Like the logic can fall apart very easily if you look too deep, but then also it's more interesting to watch the play and see what happens.
Sarah, final thought.
I'm very much of Lois's opinion. I mean, I think I've already given my final thought. Yeah, make it really beautiful, make it stylized, lean into the enchantment, add in lots of color and music and magic, and just play it with pizzazz. That's what I like Elizabethan styly pizzazz. That's what I would do with it. Yeah, make it into a mask.
Aliki, final thoughts.
Nothing original really. For me, the modern callback is the Fred Astaire musicals, or maybe the MGM musicals, in which everything is so cunningly crafted to delight that the fact that it doesn't make any sense doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is one of these plays where it's the small stuff that is sort of the problem. We've been constantly asking, why are they doing this? Why is this? And it's looking at the details. And in performance, of course, with a bit of luck, the audience aren't looking at the details. They're just carried along by it. And it goes in however it goes. We've spent 3 days. We've got to a certain point with Endymion. We will dig further down the line once we've completed the rest of Lyly, which hopefully we will manage to do in the next few months, and maybe be able to plan a second look. All that remains is thank everyone in the room for all their wonderful thoughts, and goodbye to the man in the moon. It's just the tale of a man in the moon, people. Just the tale of a man in the moon.